In the midst of all the chaos that 2020 has had to offer, one work of art took the world by storm, revolutionizing the world of rap for the better. Cardi B's single WAP featuring Megan Thee Stallion became an instant hit overnight with its vulgarity, rhythm, and bright pink aesthetic. But what were the ingredients that led to the creation of this musical and visual macaroni in the pop masterpiece?
Hi, I'm Post Malone, and you're listening to the Postmodernist Post with your host, Post.
In today's episode, we'll be looking at a postmodern artifact of graphic design, the artwork featured on Cardi B's hit new single, WAP, designed by Nikki Chulo. By tracing back influences of WAP imagery throughout history and discovering its social and political context, I will show you how the advancements in women's rights and liberation, history of music-related art, and impact on hip-hop culture by people of color have all contributed to the art of wet-ass pussy. Throughout much of history, women have been viewed as lesser than, with women of color having it especially bad as most of Western society seeing their only redeeming quality as what was in between their legs. Art in the age of extreme sexism reflected fetishism, as projected onto these women visible in Henri Adrien Tanou's painting In the Harem, which fetishizes two whitewashed women of color through the lens of Orientalism. Tanou takes advantage of these women's ethnic origins to excuse their scandalous looseness and entice art connoisseurs with the availability of these young women. While paintings like these only serve to quench the thirsts of white male fantasies, the introduction of ad illustration into the world tapped into a female market with images of women for women. This job poster, illustrated by Alphonse Mucha, may play on fetishism similarly to Tanou's painting, but to women the image represents freedom to make choices with one's own body, whether it's by letting down her hair or lighting up a smoke. Despite a shift in attitudes through the first wave of feminism, not much change was made to give women more bodily autonomy, and among the women with the least of this freedom were African American slaves. One activist who looked to elevate her fellow women of color to a status of equal autonomy was Sojourner Truth, who in her speech, Ain't I a Woman, asked nobody ever helps me into carriages or over mud puddles or gives me any best place. And Ain't I a Woman? By asking questions like these, Truth's activism pushed to promote black women to the same status as white women, who while more privileged were also fighting for their own rights and freedoms. As time went on, women achieved more agency to express themselves with their bodies as they saw fit. One emblem of this was Marilyn Monroe, sex symbol of the 50s, who was immortalized here in Andy Warhol's Shop Marilyn's. Through the bright colors of pop art, Andy Warhol's choice of her as his muse to depict society's relationship with fame just goes to show how Monroe and what she stood for had gone so mainstream. But perhaps the greatest gift to the women's rights movement towards bodily autonomy came with the invention of the pill, which during the sexual revolution allowed women the control to enter into relationships without the fear of getting pregnant. But with the newfound freedoms came a new rallying cry, My Body, My Choice, a slogan popularized by Roe v. Wade, and society shifted its attitudes regarding the sexual liberation of women. In this 90s Versace ad campaign, the models are shot looking directly into the camera, showing you that they are in control of the image you see of them. Through this shift in how Western culture views female bodily autonomy, women such as the stars and involved in WAP have found freedom to express their sexuality as they please in the name of women's rights. Looking back at the artistic influences of WAP that feature women, many similarities can be seen, from stylish hair to bright colors to mirror images to seeing doubles, but the major difference lies in how history portrays these women over time. The pre-modern women in Tanou's painting are shown from a male perspective with no female input whatsoever. Andy Warhol's paintings are his own male interpretation of how a modern Marilyn portrays herself in the media. But the postmodern ladies of the WAP single art take control of their own sexualized image, choosing which parts of their bodies to reveal and which parts to hide. Thanks to the great strides made in the name of women's rights, the imagery of WAP shows that no matter how appealing it may be to the male gaze, they are the only ones in charge of their wet-ass pussies. Meanwhile, when women were still fighting for the right to vote, Thomas Edison was busy inventing or possibly stealing the phonograph. This state-of-the-art recording equipment eventually paved the way for a multi-million-dollar music industry. Thanks to a man named Alex Steinwise, whose artsy album covers led to an increase in sales, a new career path for artists was born. Album art, which became a symbol of the songs that they embellished, used everything from photographs to illustrations to icons to text, but all were limited to the world of CMYK. With the invention of new technologies that used RGB, MP3s, and iTunes, album art was now being made for the digital space. This allowed artists to grab attention with high-res photos and bright, unprintable colors, like the yellows of the artwork for my album Beer Bongs and Bentleys,
Available on iTunes.
as well as the striking patterns and hues of WAP's predecessor, Invasion of Privacy, also designed by Nikki Chulo. Album art wasn't the only thing getting a revamp in the digital age, however, as music videos were also evolving in the invention of the internet. Previously featured on MTV, the art of the music video was censored to what was permissible for television. But with the creation of YouTube, ideas deemed unbroadcastable could now be featured on the internet, allowing artists greater freedom of expression. One example of this was the music video for Anaconda by Nicki Minaj, a highly suggestive video coupled with highly suggestive lyrics that paid homage to the song and video for Baby Got Back by Sir Mix-a-Lot, which, while shocking for MTV at the time, was visually far more tame than the themes of Anaconda. The vulgarity of Anaconda arguably paved the way for the WAP music video, which shares a similar aesthetic to its cover artwork and makes the shock value of Anaconda itself look tame by comparison. But despite being created out of the need to top what came before it, the visuals of Baby Got Back, Anaconda, and WAP all exist thanks to a history of music-related art, showing how a picture is worth 1,000 lyrics and $1,000. As mentioned previously, people of color have traditionally had things much worse than their white counterparts. Despite facing adversity, those who live on the edge of society still have found ways to grace the world with their artistic talents. The Harlem Renaissance, which was a surge of art and music created by African Americans living in Harlem during the 20s, brought jazz into the world, with black musicians gaining great renown for their talents despite society's contempt for them. While music of the early 20th century was created and dominated by people of color, their fame was quickly replaced by white musicians who could appropriate the styles and sounds, quickly turning their music into a whitewash genre. In addition to finding muse and famous women, Andy Warhol was inspired to duplicate the image of rock and roll star Elvis Presley in Double Elvis, a white dude whose style and genre evolved from the music of people of color.
I wonder if I know anyone like that.
Anyway, just as jazz started in the clubs and streets of Harlem, decades later a new hip-hop culture began to rise from the ashes of its renaissance. While the term hip-hop is primarily associated with rap, the culture carries a strong visual aesthetic as well. In the album art for Jay-Z's Collision Course, designed by David Cho, an artwork that inspired Nicky Chulo to pursue his career in album cover design, graffiti is used to tie Jay-Z's music to the street culture his songs are meant for. The boldness of the graffiti style wasn't the only hip-hop influence on modern rap, as flex culture also made its way into the imagery of the genre. Whether it was Nicki flexing Alexander McQueen in her Anaconda video, or Cardi and WAP telling you where she got this ring, the art of the flex is an essential part of hip-hop and largely a response to the phenomenon of racial capitalism. Often systemically valued as lesser than due to race, flex culture allowed individuals to prove their worth with expensive tangible goods, untainted by racism. In the context of the WAP cover art, glittering gold earrings and did nails show that these ladies are worth big money, enticing listeners to buy their music regardless of their racial prejudices. The imagery of WAP borrows from the aesthetics of hip-hop culture and the history of album art making, through its use of photographing the famous, enticing buyers with bright colors and expensive flexes, and developing an icon to represent its music and movement. But while today these techniques are used in the artwork for capital gain, these stem from a centuries-long struggle to value people of color as equal to the rest of society. No matter how you may feel about WAP and its aesthetic, you can't deny it is a complex work of art identifying standards set throughout history surrounding women, the art of music, and people of color, in order to break new boundaries.
And you know, for all the art that WAP has given us this year, I'd say our world is a little bit better now.